am Lequita Brooks, your social impact speaker and strategist. Welcome to Social Impact Sundays at 6, where we have massive social impact that leads to massive income. And today we have Erica Wortherly. She is a life transitions social worker. Welcome, Erica.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm definitely grateful for this opportunity to have a chat with you.
Yes, indeed. And while we're chatting it up, I know you're working on your DSW, you're working in academia, you're in the process of being an author, writing a self-help book, working with life transition. So you have a lot of things moving in this particular time. So, but we're going to start with what initially inspired you to become a social worker?
So I would say when I made the decision to become a social worker and went to that very first class, and they were describing what social worker was, I thought to myself, I've been a social worker my entire life. So I feel like this career path is one that chose me versus something that I chose. I know people enter it for different reasons, but I just recall, times even as young as elementary school where I would be the one to stand up for other kids that may have been teased, or I would befriend the kids that might be kind of shy or sitting in the corner. And then as I got older, I would find ways to really support other people in the best way I knew how. Um, when I was young, that was the first time hearing and understanding about adoption and realizing that there were children that didn't have parents. So I feel like all of those different experiences throughout my upbringing kind of groomed me for this profession.
After social work choosing you, what are some things that you've done in the profession?
Well, when I started out, once I completed my MSW, because I don't have a BSW, I did not start my career as a social worker um, after college, but I was working as a school teacher, and that's where the children are most of the time. So I was able to have a different lens from a lot of the other teachers because I would ask questions that many would not maybe ask. In school, they're focused on academics and behavior, but I was like, no, this is a mystery that needs to be solved. We need to talk to parents and we need to get more information to figure out what's actually going on. And that idea of understanding the whole child in the education spaces is something that's major to me. So that's kind of where I made my entry, was while I was working as a teacher in middle school. And then due to my internship, I was able to get some work as independent contractor. And that provided me opportunities to work with child welfare professionals, Department of Children and Families, work with kids that were in foster care and working with foster parents. So it gave me another lens or kind of peek into opportunities in social work. So I did both for a while, working with youth and families in the community and also working in schools, which ultimately led me to working, providing mental health services in schools. So no longer a teacher, but still working within schools, within the school system to provide support and services, not only to students, but also to teachers and other administrators as well.
Yeah, so you've pretty much been in education the entire time, like starting with middle school, actually teaching, and then providing mental health services within schools, and now in higher education.
Yes. So I just started working my first online adjunct position last July, and it's a great experience. Again, I enjoy teaching. So even though it's remote, there's still opportunities to engage with the students and have meetings and answer questions and things like that, to really provide that guidance because um, the profession itself has so many opportunities and avenues that I don't even think people really realize. So to be able to open up people's eyes that are pursuing the profession to all of the different ways that they can go with it, I think many are shocked because usually the first thing that comes to mind is child welfare, That's usually the first one that comes to mind is child welfare or school social work is there, but even that looks different depending on where you are. But then when you mention things like financial social work and forensic social work, people are like, wait a minute, what? All kinds of opportunities, which is one of the reasons why I love it.
Exactly. And what are some of those other outdated narratives that you're ready to just get rid of? Say adios, goodbye, good riddance.
Well, one of the biggest ones I would say is that social workers are burnt out. And this is my personal opinion. Other people can feel free to disagree. But I think burnout is a decision. When you work past with your limits, it causes burnout. But if you know where your limits are, then you can avoid it. Um, when I was throughout my schooling, from the time I was working on my bachelor's, I've had my kids. I had my kids, they were all born while I was working on my bachelor's degree. And I was working part-time, I was going to school part-time, and I gave birth to 3 kids. I got married, I got divorced. Therefore, I feel like when you get to the point of burnout, then, or you should, I say, let me back up. You should be able to recognize the point where you get to burnout. When you know you're tired and you don't want to be around anybody, or it seems like everybody's getting on your nerves and you might be the common denominator, that's the time to step back. If you're maybe not working in the right environment, it might be a time to look for a different environment to work in. I think that's one of the biggest ones. You see it a lot is the idea of burnout among social workers. Yes, jobs can put a lot of pressure on you, but you are empowered to push back, and yes, there's a shortage in some areas, but there's also, again, a wide variety of things you can do as a social worker where you could create your own lane within the profession. So I think people have to be open-minded and acknowledge their part in the burnout narrative.
I totally agree. And like you said, part of burnout is recognizing when you feel like you've had enough, you're at capacity. And then another part that you mentioned is you have to speak up for yourself. Because there are things that we can do. We empower individuals, organizations, corporations every single day as social workers. So we need to also empower ourselves to make sure that our needs are being met and that, like you said, we're taking a step back.
I did a presentation last week, and one of the things that I mentioned to this group of parents was knowing when to take that pause and determining, am I the problem or is my child the problem? Or is it a combination of both? But if both of you are going back and forth, and nothing's going to get resolved. But it's kind of the same thing if you're looking at the work that you do, if you're feeling overwhelmed, and many people do, like I mentioned my children for a reason, because many people do have families, whether they're married, have children, or maybe they're taking care of other family members. You have to know what your limits are. And if it becomes too much, it's not the only avenue to bring in an income. There's other ways to do it, whether that's finding something part-time, whether that's getting involved in something that's still related to social work, but it may be lighter than the work that you do full-time. We have to do things that bring a spark to us, because otherwise, what kind of impact can we make if we ourselves don't have the energy for it? Yes, some of the work is hard. Yes, it becomes overwhelming. But it's one of those situations where we got to recognize where we are, how the work is impacting us, and what do we have to do for ourselves. What are those things that we teach the people that we work with to do? I say it all the time to people, my team, and other people that I work with. I like to practice what I preach. So if I'm walking around burnout, but I'm giving you all kinds of advice, what kind of example am I setting?
I couldn't agree more. Like I'm always talking about, ownership and accountability and us looking within to see what what is it that we could have done differently? Because no matter if it's a good situation, bad situation, indifferent life lesson, there's always a piece that we played in it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one of the other things that I like to tell people is like know your tribe, know have a support system and determine within that tribe who is who to you. So there's some people that are going to be your cheerleaders. There's some people that are going to push you to what you think in the moment may be beyond your limits, but it's that push that you need in that moment to get you past a certain point. There's those people that are going to say you need to sit down somewhere. You need those people in your life that just sit down. Let's go watch a movie. Let's not think about work at all.
Yes,
But
let's
having
just,
that team, it doesn't have to be big, but have a team that you work with.
I guess that's part of the pause that you talked about earlier.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And then also having the team that can see, like, hey, you know what? Erica might need a pause right now. Or Lequita might be able to benefit from a pause also. And us as individuals being receptive to that.
Mhm. And that also means you have to allow it doesn't have to be a large group. I'm a small circle kind of person myself, but they have to know you well enough. It doesn't always have to be family. It can be friends. It can be coworkers. I have a coworker and she'll see me kind of going into one of my little rants and she's like, she lets me get it out and then she's like, now, you're not going to handle it that way, but let me give you some suggestions. I'm like, okay, you're right. Yeah, go for a walk.
Yes, the person that's just going to be honest, but also do it with love, but right to the point.
Yes.
So, what's next? I know you're working on your doctorate of social work. Tell us some more about that and this upcoming book. Let us know what's next for you.
So I'm at the near the end. I'm praying this is my last quarter. Um, with working with my on my DSW, it is not for the faint. I will tell you that. Um, which I heard people say before I started, and I did it anyway. But what I would like to do, I would like to continue to teach. I would like more opportunities to train and really just inspire other social workers within the profession. But as I mentioned, also working with those who are within the school system and within the juvenile justice system. So most of my work has been in schools, but my capstone for my doctorate is actually focused on working with families of youth who are involved in the juvenile justice system. It's been amazing, but it's not easy. the 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 information that I've gathered has been wonderful, and I see that as another avenue where I can be impactful in working with families. And so that's one thing. I want to work with education, work with families, but also I want to continue writing. So a few years ago, I wrote some children's books, and that was prompted because I was working in an elementary school and the young people that I was working with, everything that they talked to me about really came down to three topics, and that was anger, grief, and anxiety. And so everything that I would say to those kids and the teachers and the parents, I made it into a children's book. So, but it's not a children's book where you just sit a kid down and say, "Hey, read this book." It's actually really more of a to facilitate a conversation with a young person so that to help them understand, but also help the adult that's working with them understand. Um, but once I'm freed up to write more, um, I want to finish a book that I've been really working on. Uh, It initially started over 20 years ago. So I want to finally finish it, but I got to the point where I decided I'll finish it when I finish my doctorate, and then the book can be completed. So, and that really talks about a lot of transitions and how they are handled. It's more personal for me, I should say. but also meant to inspire other people. So I'm working on that. But I also have so many other topics. I have like binders and notes, and I have all kinds of notes in my phone for all of these ideas that come to mind. But that I have to finish first. That project I have to finish first. And it really talks about a little bit about my upbringing, but mostly about my adulthood. When it comes to career, when it comes to parenting, when it comes to family, when it comes to education, all of those different topics. So I'm excited to be able to finish it finally.
20 years in the making. Yes,
20
indeed.
years in the making.
So any advice you would share with our audience?
So my advice would be to don't limit yourself, but also don't allow people to put you in a box. There's so many things that you're capable of that you may have not even imagined, but if the idea comes, write it down, focus on it. Try to do what you got to do, whatever your process might be, to discover what those thoughts or ideas actually mean, and bring them to life. Bring them to life and just see what happens. I think often people are afraid to take chances, and often people allow others to have more influence than they should on what your future should look like. But really just, like I said, I have sticky notes and notes everywhere, and all kinds of notebooks where it's literally just might be one or two sentences. And all of those things I circle back to periodically. And I'm like, what was I going through at that time? I wonder what that means to me now, but really just, don't limit yourself. Have more to offer the world by listening to what comes to mind. It's there for a reason. It's there for a reason. We just have to pause long enough to hear it, and then do the work to understand it and make something happen.
Awesome words of wisdom, Erica. I just want to say I thank you and I appreciate you.
I appreciate you.
All right. Well, thank you to our audience. I am Lequita Brooks, your social impact speaker and strategist. Thank you for joining us for Social Impact Sundays at 6. And make sure you go to thesocialworkmovement.com to get involved. Support social workers with being valued, respected, and well compensated. Until next time, have an amazing day.